Commissioner for Trade Maroš Šefčovič will continue with our little tradition of learning Polish. Today's word is unsurprisingly unity. So in Polish this means jedność. Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And unity is, in fact, a good way to start the briefing. As the Polish EU Council presidency, we decided that it's really critical for us to pull together ministers for an extraordinary Foreign Affairs Council meeting on trade, given the tariffs put forward by the United States last week. Many of you know that these were the highest tariffs really in about 100 years, and the message that came out from the Council is very much a message of unity, but I'll come back to this. We've had very open and honest discussion. We all probably wondered how EU member states will react to these extraordinary moves by the United States, moves that have perhaps certainly upended the current model of trade relations, moves that cost already over $5 trillion when you look at the US stock market. So these are moves that certainly hit the US consumers, but they will not be good for European or other global or other countries across the globe. So it's very clear that there are no winners, and this was something that was emphasized by all the member states. All of us would prefer a negotiated solution that takes us away from the potential trade war that can lead to a loss of jobs, loss of wealth. We remember what happened many years ago, many decades ago, when real trade wars start. So this is what everyone wanted. There was a huge support and big thanks to Commissioner Šefčovič and his team. This was emphasized time and time again for his engagement with the US side to the extent that US wants to engage at this moment, for his openness and transparency. So again, Maroš, I really wanted to thank you publicly, because this was said many times behind the closed door. It's great to have you in the driving seat of our conversations with the US side. Again, this is the goal is to keep Plan B. Well, Plan A is engagement and negotiations, while keeping Plan B, potential response, firmly in our back pocket. Commissioner Šefčovič will talk about the details of the plan that we already have prepared. We are not focusing at the moment on the so-called reciprocal tariffs. I mean so-called because the methodology used by the US side is not yet entirely clear to us why those are the levels of tariffs. But we have a prepared response on the steel and aluminum tariffs that will be coming in soon, in the coming days, while we are preparing in a more responsible way to respond to the so-called reciprocal tariffs. Our goal is certainly not to escalate, but to negotiate, so we want to get to negotiations. We have also had a robust conversation about China. This was we began with a readout of Commissioner Šefčovič's trip to China. Again, a very high level of appreciation for the readout. Again, a lot of constructive conversation, how we keep a balanced relationship with China, which, as you all know, is our important third trading partner. So those were the two main relationships that we wanted to address, with issues that are really impacting EU businesses, EU consumers, including on Chinese the issue of overcapacity. Overall, very productive, very strategic conversation. We were very happy that we were able to meet, and frankly, we were glad to do it as the Polish presidency to call this meeting. This is key for us to talk, to understand each other, to engage each other in order to preserve the unity, and this goal was very much achieved today. Let me stop here. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Michał. I really would like to thank the Polish presidency for great cooperation we have with the whole team, with you, Michał, and of course for organizing this critical debate. I think that, as you said, this clearly was a time well spent, especially in a moment that requires a constant and a strategic coordination. I'm very thankful to you for the chance to update the ministers on my recent engagement with my US counterparts and, of course, to discuss the way forward. The current trade situation with the United States, our most significant partner, is in a tough spot. A range of tariffs is hitting a significant portion of EU exports. In fact, 380 billion euros worth of EU exports to the US. So we are talking here some 70% of our total exports are facing tariffs of 20% or 25% or even higher when combined with existing most favored nation tariffs like 27.5% duty on passengers' cars altogether. To put it in a perspective, over 80 billion euros in duties, an 11-fold jump from 7 billion euros the US currently collects. From day one, my focus has been on initiating meaningful negotiations with the US administration, building momentum at every step. And I appreciate the efforts of my counterparts, Secretary of Commerce Latnik and US Trade Representative Ambassador Greer, for maintaining an open and candid line of communication with us. So where do we stand? Let me break it down into the three key points. First, both sides recognize that EU-US trade relationship could benefit from a fresh look and a boost in strategic areas. We face similar challenges. For instance, global overcapacity is driven by non-market practices, the race for leadership in semiconductors, or securing critical minerals. If we team up, we could build a truly transatlantic marketplace that benefits both sides. In fact, as just mentioned by President von der Leyen, we have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for cars and all industrial goods. Second, let's be clear. However, engaging the US will take both time and effort. Right now, we are in the early stages of discussions because the US views tariffs not as a tactical step, but as a corrective measure. We are fully prepared to sit at the negotiation table whenever our American partners are ready. Third, while the EU remains open to and strongly prefers negotiations, we will not wait endlessly. Until we see tangible progress, we will be working along three tracks: defend our interests through countermeasures, diversify our trade through new agreements, and deter harmful trade diversions. On defending via countermeasures, in response to the steel and aluminium tariffs, we received valuable feedback from our member states and 660 stakeholders. After carefully reviewing all of it, we have worked to table a robust list of countermeasures while balancing the burden across all member states. We will be sending the final list and tariff levels to them later today. The vote is set for April 9th, with the final list adopted on April 15th, and then duties on products will kick in on that day for the first set of measures, and on May 15 for the remaining ones. On the diversification, it is in our interest to strengthen our trade and investment ties with partners around the globe like India, Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, or in the Gulf region. And I want to hear from all our chief negotiators overseeing our active free trade agreement talks in order to assess how best to accelerate these talks. On deterring trade diversions, we are prepared to use every tool in our trade defence arsenal to protect EU single market, EU producers and EU consumers. We will start by enhancing our import surveillance system to track real-time import flows, feeding our action with a timely intelligence, and I think you just heard from the President von der Leyen that to that effect we will set up a specific task force. Finally, let's not forget that while the US has decided to step back from parts of the global trading system, that system is still crucial for the EU and the rest of the world. The EU makes up 13% of global goods trade. Our priority, along with the rest of the WTO, is to protect the remaining 87% and make sure that the global trade system prevails for the rest of us. Turning our discussion on China, I briefed the ministers on my recent visit to Beijing, aimed at fostering cooperation to rebalance our trade and investment relationship with tangible results. We covered key long-standing issues like overcapacity and subsidies, market access barriers for many European products, and the need to level the playing field for EU companies in China. We also addressed the Chinese investments in the EU electric vehicle supply chain to boost competitiveness and jobs in the European Union, with a focus on technology transfer, research and development, and local sourcing of key components and the value generated here. Lastly, we explored upgrading our customs cooperation, given that 91% of e-commerce entering the EU comes from China. I believe that this was an important first step in putting our engagement with China on the right track. Let me conclude by thanking once again to the Presidency and to Michał for excellent chairing of what was today very political, very strategic debate where I very much support all the clear messages from all Member States for the unity of the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's take some questions. Bata, please. The floor is yours. I think the microphone is there in the middle.
Bata Pomecka, Polish Radio. I've got a question concerning what the Commissioner said. He's waiting for the US to reply that the European Union will not wait endlessly. Do you envisage or do you take into account delaying the entering into force the first countermeasures if negotiations start? And for this unity, I'm wondering, did you get all countries on the board? Because before the meeting we've heard from different member states that some would like to hit, for example, big tax, and some would like to wait and not to start with the countermeasures. Thank you. And if I may, the answer in Polish, the Polish Minister. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. Ja mówię po polsku, but not at that level of detail. But
excellent. You can continue. You can continue.
Allow me to start answering in English, and I'm sure that Michał will do it in perfect, beautiful Polish. On your first question on the countermeasures, as you know, this is the process which is already going on for some time. I mean, we've been doing our utmost to consult widely the member states, to consult widely stakeholders. So as I said, we got 660 comments and contributions from the stakeholders. And today I think that we had this last high-level political discussion. And I think what was very important is that, I mean, there was strong perception of unity, and also on the need to respond, because I think we clearly demonstrated that we are ready to sit with our American partners at any time at the negotiating tables. We are ready to engage. I was, I think, the first foreign official who actually had the chance to talk to Secretary Latnik almost immediately after his confirmation, which was already in February. Since that, we met personally for many hours, and we are talking on phone. We have VTCs, and I think that our American partners know that we are willing to engage. At a certain time, I understand that they are reflecting on many of the issues, and despite of all discussions we had, we have seen the tariffs being imposed upon the EU on the 2nd of April, and therefore I think we have to proceed with adopting our countermeasures. All the deadlines here are clearly determined by the legal process, so we will be distributing the finalists this evening. We expect the vote on Wednesday, and once this is done, so the collection of the duty starts as of 15th of April for the first part, and in full respect of WTO methodology, second part will kick in 30 days later, so we are talking about 15th of May. Here we are talking about the response, the countermeasures to the steel, aluminium and derivatives tariffs, but of course, since they've been imposed upon the EU, we have seen the new tariffs on cars, new so-called, and I would underline the word so-called reciprocal tariffs from US. So of course, this forces us to look at additional steps, and this would be something we still need to reflect upon, and we got some valuable input from the member states, from the ministers, which we of course evaluate, and we will proceed as always in close consultations with our member states and with the key stakeholders.
Dziękuję bardzo za to pytanie dotyczące jedności i solidarności podczas dzisiejszej Rady. Ja przyznam, że za zamkniętymi drzwiami to właśnie tam widać największą jedność. Czasami niektórzy politycy pewnie chętnie by powiedzieli coś bardziej do swoich wyborców i mówią czasami twardo lub właśnie używając troszeczkę, sugerując inny kierunek. Dzisiaj widzieliśmy prawdziwą jedność, której nie byliśmy, znaczy mogło się różnie zdarzyć, a była jedność. Wszystkie państwa członkowskie chciałyby oczywiście uniknąć wojny handlowej. Wszystkie państwa członkowskie chciałyby, abyśmy doszli do poziomu negocjacji o konkretach, o których mówi komisarz Šefčovič. Tylko jak to często się mówi, no potrzeba dwoje, aby zatańczyć. It takes two to tango, jak to mówią. Wszyscy również nie chcą działać zbyt pochopnie. Dlatego jest to poczucie odpowiedzialności w tym momencie, dania pewnej przestrzeni, aby porozmawiać również z naszymi obywatelami, z naszymi przedsiębiorcami o wpływie, jakie te cła wywołają w Europie, i również dać chwilę stronie amerykańskiej na przemyślenie sprawy, bo tak jak wspominałem, w 2 dni rynek amerykański stracił 5 bilionów dolarów, a jesteśmy dopiero na początku na pewno trudnego tygodnia, bo to nie są dobre rozwiązania również dla amerykańskiej gospodarki. Więc tutaj mogę tylko jeszcze raz potwierdzić, mieliśmy tą jedność, na której nam bardzo zależało.
Dziękuję. Thank you very much. Philip, then Camille.
Philip Blenkinsop from Reuters. Commissioner, you have said, and obviously President von der Leyen has mentioned this offer to the United States of zero for zero tariffs. Can you tell us when that offer was made, and can you give us some sort of sense of how the US has reacted? Obviously, your last talks, I think you described as frank. And another question, obviously the United States is now targeting 380 billion euros, I think you said, of goods. Clearly, the EU imports of US goods are below that level. So does that mean that any sort of reaction would need to go beyond goods in terms of countermeasures?
Thank you very much, Philip, for this question. I can tell you that we've been exploring these possibilities in the course of my first personal meeting with Secretary Latnik, which was, I think, 19th of February, if I recall correctly. And for the first time then, we've been exchanging as the two most important trading partners. We just wanted to understand what is the US approach, what are the challenges we have to face together, and we've been comparing the notes. And as you know, the US has a concept where they introduced on the 2nd of April the so-called reciprocal tariffs, but at the same time they are focusing on so-called big five, as they call it, on cars, pharmaceutical industry, steel, metals, lumber, and semiconductors. And it was quite clear that they would pay special attention to these five categories, and especially I understand the cars is of a big symbolic significance to our American partners. So we've been comparing the figures on the imports, exports, and on the whole segment of the car industry. And I said, if this is the issue, let's look at our tariff levels, because it's true for the personal vehicles, the tariffs on the EU side have been lower. But if you look at pickup or vans, then the tariffs from the US had been much higher. I think, if I recall correctly, up to 25%. So in the past there was a balance in this element between different categories of the cars. But I said, if this is the issue, so let's talk, let's explore the possibility how we can push these tariffs down to zero, as we had for several goods until April the 2nd, and that would clearly be the boost for the car industry from the both sides. And of course, since that we had quite a few discussions. We spent quite some time, many hours together, and I can tell you that when it comes to this segment, I said we are ready to discuss 00 for cars, but we are also ready to discuss 00 for all industrial goods. What it means? Beyond automotives, we are talking about chemicals, pharmaceuticals, rubber and plastic, machinery, and I would say rest of industrial products. So that's something what I think we will be very willing to engage, and I believe that that would be first and foremost true expression of the fact that we are allies and that we are actually creating this transatlantic marketplace for very important technologies of the future. So I hope that in a future we would be ready to come back to this discussion. Not now. I believe that in the future this would be still the possibility.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Camille, then Jorge.
The mic working? Okay. Thank you so much. Camille is from Politico. So my first question would be to Commissioner Šefčovič. I'm wondering whether you would be open to delaying the entry into force of the EU's countermeasures on steel and aluminium as requested by Italy, to give more time, for instance, to come up with a negotiation on the industrial goods deal that you just mentioned. And so this morning during the doorsteps, we also gathered a lot of differing views when it comes to hitting trade and services, and also potentially triggering the anti-coercion instrument. I was wondering if this was discussed today and whether there was appetite from the EU capitals on it. Thank you so much.
I think your second question is also the question I forgot to answer to Philip in previous round. If it comes to the timing, this is clearly framed by the legal procedures and also by the way how we propose these countermeasures to be taken. So for us, I think it's not possible now to delay the entry into force, and therefore we follow our legal process. And as I said, we expect the vote on Wednesday, and if the vote is positive, then we will proceed with the 15th of April date. On the second point, and on the question also on Philippe, indeed, you rightly pointed out that currently the US is covering more than 70% of our exports. We're talking about 380 billion of euros of goods exported from EU to US, and of course this is very massive. So we are not in a business to going let's say cent for cent or tit for tat or dollar for dollar, but we of course would consider what are all the other instruments which we have on the table. And there have been different ideas which have been mentioned by the various delegations. Maybe I would leave the space to the presidency, to Michał, to describe them, because he's representing the whole EU member states. What is, I think, important for the position of the Commission is that at this stage we are ready to consider all options. All options are on the table, and we will consult with the stakeholders and with our member states how to use all the instruments we have at our disposal. Michał.
Thank you very much. Let me first address the question about the delay, because I think that's something that even though we didn't specifically focus on any particular member state or their proposal, there was a sense in the room of not being trigger happy. In American speak, talk first, shoot later, if anything, not the other way around. There was a clear sense and preference for responsibility and taking a responsible measure of the impact that U.S. tariffs will have on European businesses, European citizens. We do have to remember that our response, our imposition of tariffs will, of course, protect our businesses, but at the same time will be additional hurt to EU economy. So there was a sense of responsibility, but not no one was pushing for just stepping back and being soft. Everyone very much emphasized the need for developing a very clear response, and Plan B was used many times in this conversation. To the question about what that Plan B could be, given the size of U.S. tariffs, again the emphasis was on proportionality. So yes, there were various ideas put on the table. Some countries mentioned services, others didn't. Some countries mentioned digital services, others didn't. But as Commissioner said very clearly, there was a sense that everyone is open to having all the tools on the table, and I would also emphasize something that it's hard for perhaps for Commissioner Šefčovič to say. Very clear sense of trust in the way that Commission is engaging and preparing the response. So we have everything on the table, and in a responsible, measured way, we'll put a package that hopefully will never have to be used because we'll get to positive negotiations with the US side. Thanks.
Thank you very much. It's Jorge, then Joanna, and then Manuel.
Jorge Valero with Bloomberg. Question for the Commission and the President, of course, if you want to comment as well. First, on these all options that are on the table, one of them, of course, being mentioned by some delegations is the anti-coercion instrument, as you know well. But first, there needs to be coercion. So my question is if the Commission currently considers that there is coercion so far by the measures announced by the U.S. administration. And secondly, the Navarro, member of the U.S. administration, has said today that the offer to lower tariffs, it's a good but small start, I think is the word that he used, and he keeps insisting, or the U.S. administration keeps insisting on the non-barrier issues, including the VAT. So my question is if you are willing, if the Commission is willing to discuss these non-tariff barriers, for example, agri-food standards, tech rules, or even the VAT. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this stage, I wouldn't go into the precise definitions or the speculation on what kind of instrument we would use or how we would describe the reasoning for use of this or that instrument. As it was rightly pointed out by Michał, we preferred the negotiations. Therefore, also our response is very gradual. We are just reacting to steel and aluminium. I think it's very, very incremental. It's kind of stretched over the time because we want to create also the necessary negotiating space. As I said, we are prepared to engage, and it would be the good outcome for everyone. But at the same time, until now, despite of efforts and opening, we haven't seen the real engagement which would lead to the mutually acceptable solution. Because it has to be fair for both sides. And what was happening right now, from one side we share with the US the understanding of the importance of reindustrialization of US. We are actually aiming at the same goals to reindustrialize Europe. We also understand the focus on future-oriented technologies, where we have to fight dangerous dependencies when we are talking about critical raw materials, when we are talking about semiconductors, or to tackle the danger of overcapacities in the steel sector. We just adopted the Steel Action Plan, so I can give you from the top of my head, in a negative sense, very, very impressive figures, how much of capacity of the steel and aluminium production we lost over 10-15 years. So we understand the reasoning for that, but we don't understand why we should be the addressee of such a tough measures from the US, and we still believe that as allies, the best way to sort this out would be negotiations and would be mutually acceptable settlement. If it comes to the non-tariff barriers, I can tell you that we spent quite some time and energy to explain how the VAT works, that we are not only one. There are more than 160 countries which is using VAT. VAT is an important source of income for our member states. This is how we fund our state budget, and we are not going to change our VAT system. If it comes to other areas, we are, of course, prepared to talk, to explain, but what is very important for us that in the end we would have a mutually acceptable and mutually advantageous solution. We are two biggest trading partners in the world. We trade 1.5 trillion euros every year. And we are also a very important investor in the United States of America. So we, of course, expect the appropriate treatment and approach as the biggest trading partner in this case rightly deserve. So we are ready to discuss, to look at things, but it has to be a mutually advantageous solution. We know that the US has some questions towards us, but I also was presenting the list of different blocked products from EU provenience towards US, which some of them are in the drawers for quite some time. So I think that the best thing for this would be that the two biggest economy and two allies would sit together and solve these problems through the negotiations. That's clearly our preference.
Just really quickly to the question about to the comment of Mr. Navarro. I mean, on one hand, it's great to see you, Jorge. I really fondly remember our conversation before the last council, off the record, and where we could freely speak. Looking forward to one in the future as well. But to what Mr. Navarro said, on one hand, I understand that the Americans did not emphasize VAT as much in their so-called reciprocal tariffs, which is a good thing. But perhaps one could read his statement as a beginning of an openness to negotiations that we really do need, given how mutually beneficial this strongest economic relationship has been for both sides. Again, this is the pillar of the global economy. It's not the US-China relations. It's not the Europe-China relations. It's really the transatlantic economic relation is the pillar of the global economy. What I would want to add something that I missed in the beginning, and Maros mentioning the reindustrialization sort of sparked this, was one other aspect that almost every member state pointed out to, is that this tough moment is an opportunity for us to look into European single market and make sure that we complete the single market, use this as an opportunity to offset potential loss from those tariffs, that we can actually do a lot of the homework here at home, of course on top of diversifying our relationship with other trading partners, of course on top of engaging with the Americans, but a lot of the work can be done here, and that's something that is not Maros's homework. It's something that is done by Stéphane Séjourné in his portfolio, that includes also the simplification and deregulation that goes really hand in hand in this moment where we need to figure out how to deal well with the challenges by also looking at competitiveness and completion of the single market here in Europe. Thanks.
Thank you. Joanna, you still have a question? And then Manuel.
Hello. Joanna Sypińska for MLEX. Dzień dobry. Two questions. First of all, about still the EU position. I wonder if you could say what should happen on the US side for the EU to drop or delay its retaliation for the so-called reciprocal tariffs. And for a change, a question on China. Based on what you discussed today, could you say maybe where the EU was going or is going with its relationship with China? Is it the right moment to maybe soften the EU approach to China, given the global situation, given the position of the US? And also a quick question about the ongoing negotiations with China on the electric vehicles. I would like Commissioner Šefčovič to update us on where you are in these negotiations right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think if it comes to steel and aluminium, I have to say that we haven't started this. And we've been doing our utmost not to go down that path. Therefore, as I said, immediately I flew over and was engaging from the moment one. And we've been very, very transparent with our American partners about our position, about our openness to talk, but also about the possible reactions if we simply would not arrive at the positive negotiating outcomes. Of course, the easiest step here would be if the US would suspend the tariffs against the EU, and they will engage with us in genuine negotiations. And as I said, we would be prepared to look at everything because we prefer, mutually acceptable negotiated outcome. So that I think is valid for now, but I also for the future, because I believe that sooner or later we'll be sitting at the negotiating table. I believe so. And I hope that we'll be able to arrive at the mutually acceptable compromise which would restore our close trading relationship, and where we would be looking at the ways how to lower or get rid of the tariffs, as we suggested on cars and industrial goods in February. And we would focus our efforts on that effort, how to create this transatlantic marketplace for industrial goods, for the technologies of the future, and for the good cooperation between two transatlantic allies. If it comes to China, I think that my visit there was clearly guided by the fact that we need to re-engage with China. It's our third most important trading partner if it comes to the volumes of goods traded, and we've been accumulating a lot of issues on the table. So I think it's a time to start removing part of the problems from the table. And I went there as a first member of the new commission to set up this new course of work, how we would discuss all the open issue with Chinese counterparts, and how we would engage with my political counterpart, Trade Minister Wang Wentao. And of course, this is what is taking place right now. Of course, I would be very much encouraged if the discussions which we had would lead to the concrete results. There is a lot of very concrete things and deliverables we discussed, and once we would have the very tangible deliverables, I will be of course very happy to share it with the member states, but also with you as representatives of the media. If it comes to battery electric vehicles, again described the methodology. I described our fears and concerns over the subsidies into this very sensitive sector for the EU, and what we proposed was that we would be also ready to discuss with our with the concrete companies the so-called price undertaking measures. So this is what we've been proposing also at the end of the last year. Hopefully this time, when I had the chance to explain it in greater details to the political leadership of China, that we will be able to rediscuss this topic again.
Let me just weigh in very briefly on. Let me just weigh in very briefly on the China question. I think the sense in the room was that the fact that we have real challenges with our partners, allies from United States doesn't mean that the challenges and problems in our economic relationship with China go away. Because you put this in the context of those two key relationships. So I have not seen a movement. Okay, we have problems across the Atlantic. Let's just switch, so to say. There is a, as Commissioner said, there is a great opportunity in this relationship, but right now there is a lot of imbalances. We discussed the growing trade deficit that is growing very, very fast. We have discussed some unfair practices that have to be addressed, and Commissioner made a very clear readout of the honest conversation, so I'm not going to go into the details, as well as a clear plan forward. But again, the fact that we have problem with the one partner, with the transatlantic partner, doesn't mean that the challenges and problems with China just went away. Thanks.
Thank you. So we will have two last questions. So it's Manuel and Kim, and we will have to wrap up.
Hello, Manuel Gomez, El País. Well, my question is for the Commissioner. Several ministers have said this morning before the meeting that it's necessary to listen to the markets, these black days on the markets. Well, I'd like to know if you share these words and if you think that these black days in the markets can help to change the mentality of the U.S. administration. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Indeed, this is kind of black day for the markets, I would say, all over the world, because I mean, we have seen the plunge in U.S. stock markets, but the same in Asia and also in Europe. So this is just, I would say, the market reaction to what I think many of my colleagues in the room described as the most important paradigm shift in global trading patterns since the Second World War. That's what has happened on the 2nd of April, and of course this introduces a lot of uncertainty, lack of predictability, inflation fears, and the fact that tariffs are in the end the taxes which will be paid by the businesses, but especially by the final consumers. So that in the end increases, of course, the fears among the consumers. Can I spend so much? Will we have inflation? What would be the future of my job? Or how this would reflect on my city, on my factory, and on my family situation? So these are I would say, the debates which are now taking place, I would say, all across the world. And be it in Europe, be it in the US, and I'm not even going to tell you the distressed phone calls we are getting from emerging economies and from the developing countries, which are very much hit twice by the lack of development aid and by very high import tariffs. So this is, I think, reflected in this mood. Therefore, I think we are so careful, and therefore we've been saying from the beginning that our response would be measured, would be well calibrated, and we always add the sentence, we would prefer negotiations and negotiated solutions, because we know what kind of impact this might have on the real economy and on the real people. And therefore you see that we are really progressing step by step in this regard, but I wouldn't dare to speculate if it would have any impact on decision making across the Atlantic.
Thank you. And the last question, Kim, please.
Thank you. Kim McCrail from the Wall Street Journal. I'd like to ask for the options, the things that the European Commission has to bring to the table in negotiations with the United States, beyond the idea of zero for zero tariffs. What else are you bringing? And is there anything in particular that you're bringing to address some of the fundamental concerns around the trade deficit, the imbalance that the U.S. talks about? For example, I think many of us have heard in the past the idea of perhaps offering to buy more liquefied natural gas or offering to buy more defense equipment. Are things like that still on the table, and have you brought any of that up in the discussions that you've had? And just a very quick separate question. For the revised list of retaliatory tariffs, the one that is coming soon, can you tell us what the value of the goods will be that will be targeted in the end? So I think you said up to 26 billion previously. Will it still be at that level, or will it be somewhere lower? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. If it comes to your inquiry of what we are bringing to the table, at first I have to say that from the outset we have clear difference of opinion about the figures if it comes to our trade, because our figures, I believe that they are very, 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 very precise, saying that indeed the United States have trade surplus of 154 billion euros, but at the same time we shouldn't forget that trade in services is a strong feature of U.S. businesses, and here the United States of America has a surplus of 104 billion euros. So altogether, in the deficit in a trade of goods and services, because this is the category which is, I would say, internationally recognized, we have a deficit of 50 billion. Compare it to 1.5 trillion. So we are talking about like 3% of our turnover. On top of it, I would add that we have mutual investment in the realm of 5 trillion euros, and around 300 billion euros is flying over Atlantic Ocean every year, and the investment from the savings account and pension funds from Europe into the New York Stock Exchange, into the startups, or into the companies in the United States of America. I'm not even going into the direction of billions. The US companies are generating from online advertising and different digital services that they're offering in Europe. So from what I think describing here, we really believe that we have balanced trade, which was working well, which was really built over the decades as a transatlantic trade, where I would say the global supply chains been kind of factoring in the fact that the tariffs between two has been very, very small. We are talking about, if you take US technology, between 3 and 5%. If you take the European methodology, it's around it was unfortunately around 1%. So, of course, this is I would say the starting point where clearly from the outset we've been looking from the two different angles. Of course, if we have to look for the ways how to rebalance the 50 billion euros of deficit, I think that's something what we can discuss, and we can find a solution very quickly. As you know, for sure we will need more LNG. For sure, there are the products which are very much appreciated on the EU markets, like the soya beans, and of course we could go into the greater details in the discussions which we actually started to have: critical raw materials, semiconductors, and many other issues. So if we know that this is the issue, I think then we can sort it out very quickly. But my feeling is that this is at this stage more of a, I would say, the decision of U.S. administration to kind of transform the global trading system, and they see the tariffs as a corrective measures for many of the political goals, which I'm sure the U.S. administration can describe much better than I do. Then, if it comes to the volume of the countermeasures, you've been right that if it comes to steel, aluminium, and derivatives, so here we are talking about 26 billion euros. We are finalizing the list tonight, so it would be, for me, premature to say, but I can tell you that it will not be up to the level of 26 billion euros, because we've been listening very carefully to our member states. We wanted to make sure that the burden is spread fairly among all member states. And as I said, we are not in the business of tit for tat or penny for penny. We do this because we are forced to by these measures coming from the US side, and we still hope that in the end we will be coming to the fruitful, mutually advantageous trading relationship. Thank you.
Let me just weigh in on the question on how can we rebalance the transatlantic trade, and again, emphasis on how crucial this relationship is for both Europe and the United States. Millions of jobs depend on this relationship on both sides of the Atlantic. And it's a little bit of a question to the answer to the previous question as well, whether the market can change the mind of President Trump. I think the question is really, what are the tariffs for? Are they there as a source of revenue through the External Revenue Service? Are they meant to be an opening for the negotiations, or are they there to really change the structure of U.S. and global economy? And to be frank, I don't think, from what I heard today, that we have a clear answer to this crucial question. And to get an agreement, we need to get the answer to this question. Again, it takes two to tango, and to paraphrase this, I think this is time for us to begin to tango earnestly, and perhaps with this we'll close.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Apologies to those of you in the room and online that didn't have a chance to ask a question, but I'm sure that, on our side, the Presidency services, you can text me your question, and I'm sure on the Commission side, they also, colleagues, would be happy to help you, but we just run out of time, and there are other points of the agenda of Minister and Commissioner. So again, apologies for that, but thank you for such a numerous presence in beautiful city of Luxembourg, and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.